Welcome to the Success Talk Show, the podcast for ambitious leaders who want to get their best results and create a workplace for their teams to thrive. Each week, we share practical advice to help you accelerate your success and grow as an inspiring leader. Now, here's your host, Leadership Success Coach, Donna Siriani.
Welcome to another episode of the Success Talk Show. This is Donna Siriani, Leadership Success Coach and founder of Success Compass Academy. And in this episode, I'll share with you the value of discovering your passions and realizing the impact that it can have on your life and your work. And I'll also share with you 5 key questions to help you gain clarity on what your top 5 passions are and to help you move forward and living them more fully. Now, before we dive in, I want to share a few mistakes that I see people make. So actually, the first one isn't really a mistake. It's just something that makes me cringe. Whenever I hear the career advice, follow your passions, I do cringe a little because, yes, there is enormous value in following your passions. That's what we're going to talk about today. But simply saying follow your passions completely misses other extremely important parts of the puzzle. To achieve professional success or success in life, you really need to look at the entire puzzle. Now, in my Acclimate to Accelerate program that's part of Success Compass Academy, I have developed what I call your success compass, which will guide you in the right direction. Again, in your career, in your work, in your life. And your unique success compass includes what you're good at, what's important to you, what your passions are, what you most want to be known for, which is your personal brand, your longer term vision for your life and your career, and the planning process you're going to use for setting goals and achieving goals so that you can accelerate your success. Now, of course, passions are a key part of that puzzle or your success compass. So in this episode, I'll touch on ideas for how you may be able to incorporate passions into your professional life. Now, I'm sure as this unfolds, you'll see a distinction between the passions that are really purely hobbies or interests and the passions that may actually provide clues to the work that you might want to do. You're doing today, work you could do differently, something that's on your mind for the future, but you may see a distinction. For example, I'll use myself as an example. One of my top passions is snowboarding, but of course, that's not how I earn a living. I haven't actually found anybody who's willing to pay me to snowboard, but if you're listening and other than being a snowboard instructor, if you have ideas, certainly let me know. But clearly others have done this. I mean, I own a Jeremy Jones snowboard and I watch all his videos. So, he's a great example of somebody who started snowboarding as a kid, became a professional snowboarder, was in competitions for many years, and now he's got a very successful line of snowboards. He has his own company. He travels the world making these incredible snowboard videos, and much more. I also had met a woman when I first learned to snowboard 20 years ago. She was already 60 years of age. She had just learned to snowboard, and she shared with me that she was passionate about it. She'd just been snowboarding for 1 year, and she confided in me that she would like to someday maybe be a snowboard instructor. So I went back a couple of years later to discover that in fact she had become the head of the snowboarding school, and all the certainly much younger instructors adored her, and she was still going strong on the slopes well into her 70s. So anyway, you never know. Maybe I've still got a career as a snowboard instructor. But anyway, many of us can see that distinction between a passion that stays purely an interest or hobby and those that can spill over or even become a career. Now, the second mistake that I see people make quite often is when they think about their passions, they may automatically defer to what they think should be on their list instead of trusting their instincts, gut reaction, maybe what's in their heart and soul of what they'd like. So I actually became certified in a methodology for helping people identify their passions. It's one of the workshops that I've given, many different places. I've done it with thousands of people. And usually people will get tripped up thinking, ooh, gee, I maybe should put on the list that one of my passions is spending time with my wife and kids. But you know what? That's one of those shoulds that I'd like for you to set aside for now, because of course you love spending time with your wife and kids, but give yourself, when you think about your passions, full permission to listen to your instincts of what you're passionate about. Examples could be traveling, gardening, photography, music, food, anything. It could be anything that comes into your mind. And of course, it may have something to do with your work, but it might not. So mistake number 3 is judging your passions as if you want them to sound more noble. Maybe the mistake you might make is saying, ooh, I don't really want to put attending concerts and listening to music as one of my passions, because, sometimes you'll judge yourself and say, oh, it sounds so shallow or so trivial. It's a mistake. Don't do that. Don't judge your passions that they're not big enough, they're not worthy, they're not things like solving world hunger. They don't have to be. Just, it's personal, it's private. A passion is what lights you up. It gives you energy. It's exciting. When you think about ideally how you'd love to be spending your time, these things just really excite you, interest you. And again, if you were to do them, they feel energizing. Okay, so hold on to that. Don't let your list become things you think sound good or you should do them. Okay. Mistake number 4 is making it about money itself instead of what the money can buy. So for example, my assumption is you're not passionate about the cash, the written check, or the bank statement, or the money itself. What you're passionate about is what you can do with the money. It may be freedom, independence, travel, having your own business, being able to use that money and how you're going to help others. Maybe you want to have a boat or whatever it is. Don't judge it, but just be honest about what that money means to you, not the money itself. It's not a dollar figure. It's what it does for your life, your lifestyle, and being able to pursue your ideal life. Okay, not the cash itself. As much as we all love cash. The 5th mistake that I see is that once you spend the time thinking it through, you've got a list of maybe up to 5 passions. The mistake I see people make is they get kind of excited, like, yes, this is my list of top 5 passions. It's clear, I'm going to move forward. But then they make the mistake of not keeping them visible so that they take steady action towards them. Instead, they go back to their old ways of following the path of least resistance, simply defaulting to being reactive to the day instead of proactively designing the day or the week or the weekend. So once you have a list that you are excited about, and again, it could be 5 passions, put them somewhere where they're going to remind you. Could be on your iPhone, your smartphone, on a bulletin board, on your desktop as a screensaver, on the bathroom mirror. I've had mine in all of those places. So put them somewhere. I actually put them also in my planning calendar to ask myself, so this coming week, what am I going to do to make sure I'm spending some time on my passions? Okay, so those are some of the mistakes that I see people make. Now, the value in discovering your passions is that it's a powerful way to be proactive on how you want to spend your time and navigate choices. So let me give you just a few of the examples of the ways that it can help you. Number 1, when it helps you make choices to manage your time, think about this. You have limited time every day and weekend and vacation time. So when you know what your passions are, it will help you make deliberate choices to live them more fully, whether that's personal life or professional life. And remember, your passions are not specific goals with a deadline. They're how you want to live your ideal life. So again, I'm using some personal examples from clients that I've walked this through. And having done this workshop with hundreds of people, you hear pretty much everything. But examples could include having dinner parties, listening to music, attending concerts, learning, building, nurturing, maintaining relationships, food, gardening, running a business, coaching and mentoring others, travel, sports, nature. I mean, it runs the gamut. Pretty much anything you can think of. The important part is that when you get clear on what your passions are and you're navigating the day or the week, you can make deliberate choices on how are you going to carve out some time in your calendar so that you're really honoring those passions and spending some time on them. It could even be an hour a week or going to one concert a month or whatever you decide is enough or was satisfying for you. The second way that it really is of value is that it increases your energy. Because when you spend time living your passions, it energizes you. And, I go back to, I always love finding good quotes. And whenever I think about following your passions, for some reason, Warren Buffett, he's interviewed on this topic all the time. And he has a great quote: "Without passion, you don't have energy. Without energy, you have nothing." So I love that quote. So if ever you need an excuse of honoring your passions, just realize it's going to really increase your energy, right? Whatever that is. So for me, one of my passions is enjoying nature through sports. My favorite is snowboarding, but it's not always winter where I am. I happen to be living in Florida at the moment. So it could be walking the beach, hiking, kayaking, bicycling, swimming, but anything where I'm out in nature, that's one of my passions, that will increase my energy. But there's lots of other examples, but that's one of my favorites. Now, the third way it can help you and add value is it helps you improve your ability to manage stress. Now, managing stress, if you think about it, when you are doing things that align with your passions, right, and you're feeling more satisfied, fulfilled, it could be relaxing, it could be energizing, but that can help you develop strategies for stress tolerance. Because if you're doing things that bring you joy, that energize you, and so on, those specific activities that you've identified are going to help you manage stress. If you know you've got a stressful week coming up, stressful project you're working on, or what have you, if you can make sure to pay particular attention to scheduling time to devote or allocate to your passions, it's really going to help you minimize or deal with the stress. Because there will be stress. It's a question of how you deal with it. Are you proactively introducing strategies to deal with it? Okay. Now, if you'd like more tips on managing stress, listen to my podcast, episode number 15, Emotional Intelligence, Managing Stress Effectively, because there's 2 specific emotional intelligence skills that are in that particular episode, which you could use. Spending time on your passions can help you with both optimism and stress tolerance. Those are the 2 skills. So within iTunes, you would search for The Success Talk Show with Donna Sirianni, or the podcast site, which is thesuccesstalkshow.com. You'll find it on either of those places. Now, the fourth way that discovering your passions can really add value for you is that your passions become part of your personal brand. Now, when others have an opportunity to learn more about you, get to know you, what you are passionate about becomes part of your personality, it's part of your brand, and it may be what makes you more memorable. It may be what they think of when they think of you. So if you're top of mind, what are all the things that they may instantly think of? What you're good at, why they come to you for help, more about your personality and your passions. There's a number of things that all make up your personal brand, okay? So I'll just give you a very quick story about how this can serve you and be of value. So for a very long time, my number one passion has been international travel. And at this point, I've been to, at the time this story took place, I actually had been to, 32 countries and had lived in France for a few years, loved to travel. And pretty much everybody that knew me knew that I loved adventure and international travel and so on. So I was seen as a somewhat adventurous person. And when the organization needed somebody to relocate to Asia, I was one of the first people that came to mind. And so this was all part of my personal brand. So my passions of international travel, one of my passions for a very long time, many, many years, has been helping others reach their full potential and also learning. Constantly love learning, books, courses, etc. And so these things made up my personal brand of what people knew about me. So it was very logical when they asked me to go to Asia and live there for 2 years and what I needed to do. I first dragged my feet a bit because it's a much bigger move than I had anticipated, but it made sense as to why they connected the dots and thought of me, okay, because of the international travel piece. So it was an opportunity to fully live that passion. Okay, that's just an example. But for you, whatever it is, if I were to be interviewing you right now and helping you clarify your passions, there may be something that you love so much that once I get to know you, I'm always going to associate that with you. It could be also what you post on social media, if we're connected on Facebook, our relationship day to day in the office, or depending on how we're working together. It just becomes part of who you are, and other people will know that about you. So there's ways that it can benefit you, because now if I come across a resource or an opportunity, you might be the first person I think of. The next way that it can really help you and add value is it can clarify decision making. So if you're faced with a decision, you can consider how each alternative moves you closer to your passions. So I'll give you another example of where this showed up in my professional life. I had an opportunity to take a job for a role at a software company to be their chief people officer. And I really didn't want to go back into a corporate role. I was starting my own business. I didn't really want to go back into theoretically like a 9-to-5 role. But 3 of my top 5 passions were going to be fully satisfied in this new role. So it was really just an offer I couldn't refuse. And those 3 were international travel. I was going to get to go to Sweden and Russia, which I'd never been to. I love having a culturally diverse employee workforce, so that was great. Because I was going to be chief people officer, helping architect and implement an improved company culture, it really tapped into one of my passions of help others reach their full potential. And then lastly, learning. So 3 of my 5 passions were going to be significantly improved how much time I spent in my professional life on those things. So it was just a great opportunity. So that's an example of how you can use your own unique success compass to look at alternatives, look at some opportunities and say, based on what you're good at, your values, your personal brand, your vision, your passions, given the choices that you could make, which choice or decision is going to move you closer to living your passions. Okay, that's the decision-making process becomes a lot more, you can do it with a lot more confidence and clarity when you have clarity on those elements. Now, I would also say that in terms of decision-making, I wouldn't say that I've really worked with many people who've done a complete career change based solely on their passions. But by looking at your passions, getting clear on them, it can provide clues as a direction to go in. And you may do it over a period of time. It could be an abrupt change where you say, that's it, I'm going to make a change overnight. Let me give you a couple of examples. When you identify your top 5 passions, let's say that one of your aspirations is to be a writer. Let's say right now, for example, you're in a technology role, you're good at what you do, you make good money, but, in your heart, you have this burning desire to someday be a writer. Well, that's a perfect example where you don't have to quit your day job. It's something you can do on the side, and then eventually you've saved enough money or you have the right opportunity to make a switch. But I would never advise someone to just do a quick leap without giving themselves a little bit of a time for a transition. But that's one example. There's lots of things that you can do on the side or in addition to your current role so that you're still getting all that value, right? You're getting the joy, satisfaction, feeling energized, but you didn't give up your day job, okay? Now, for me, I took the same approach with coaching. At some point, I recognized that even though I was doing coaching as a senior leader in technology, I loved coaching and mentoring, loved it. On leadership skills and professional success, loved doing it. Now, that wasn't my number one job, but as a leader, I had ample opportunity to do it. But at some point, I recognized I was ready to start making that transition. Got certified to be a coach, left the company, started my own business, and I was gradually spending more and more time on what my passions were. Okay, but I didn't do it in one step. It was a multi-step process. So for you, it could run the gamut from identify your passions, see how much you can incorporate into your day-to-day as a side interest, hobby, just do more of it at work. And then, what's the possibility for a transition plan that may take a little bit longer, but something you'd love to do. So anyway, and I do help my clients make those shifts, but I always like to take a bit of a methodical approach just from a financial standpoint. Sometimes that can be the best way. So I've mentioned earlier that I have developed a program as part of Success Compass Academy called Acclimate to Accelerate. You get acclimated. What are you good at? Your values, your passions, your personal brand. What's your vision for the future? And I help you clarify your top 5 passions as part of that program. But it's again, along with all those other elements I mentioned. But for today, I just want to share with you 5 extremely important questions that you can get started with today to help you clarify your passions and live them more fully, which is what we've been talking about. So here are the 5 questions. Number 1, ask yourself, what are your top passions? Brainstorm as many things as possible that come to mind in order to complete this sentence. When my life is ideal, I am fill in the blank. Okay, just brainstorm what comes to list. You could take time doing it. I would recommend that you brainstorm and in 10 minutes, write down at least 10 ideas in 10 minutes to get the juices flowing. You could make a list of 20. There's no limit, but just don't judge. As I mentioned earlier with the mistakes I see people make, don't judge the list. Don't judge what you want to write down. Nothing is too big or too small. But the idea is these passions are how you would want to live your life. They're not goals with a deadline. I want to learn to be fluent in French in 2 years. I mean, that's a goal. That's not a passion. When my life is ideal, I am speaking French fluently. Well, that could be a passion. Like I said, be careful not to have them be all goals, but just brainstorm the list, then pick your top 5. Now, in my program, Acclimate to Accelerate, I walk you through a whole methodology on how to narrow it down from this bigger list down to 5. But for today, you're going to trust your instincts, right? Once you finish the list, you're going to circle and prioritize what you believe the top 5 are. The second question is, once you do that, you've narrowed it down to 5, how satisfied are you that today you're fully living these passions? I always like to use a score on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most. So when I mentioned the job offer that I got to be Chief People Officer, at the time that I got the job offer, 3 of the passions that I made the decision based on, and also my strengths and other things, I was not traveling internationally at all. I had clients who were international, but we were using Skype, and the consulting I was doing was local. So how satisfied was I back then as to how fully I was living my passion to travel internationally? I gave it a big fat 0, maybe or a 1. So clearly I wasn't living that passion. Okay. So that's just an example. It shows you where there's opportunity. Now, the third important question is, what is the observable or measurable evidence that you're fully living these passions? Now, I'm going to stick with the international travel for a moment. Observable, measurable evidence could be how many frequent flyer miles I've accumulated this year, how many new stamps in my passport, the photographs I've taken, new connections I've made that are people in other countries, how many countries I've visited, how many days I've spent outside the US, etc. So you could imagine what's observable or measurable evidence you're fully living your passions. And for each one of your top 5 passions, it's good to know, all right, well, if I was fully living this passion and it was a 10, it was fantastic, what would that look like? Because that gives you some indication of what you could be striving for. So for example, one of the passions that comes up quite often with my private coaching clients is to have dinner parties and invite colleagues and friends and have regular dinner parties. So the question would be, okay, well, how often would you need to do that for you to feel you're fully living that passion? Is it once a week, once a month? So it's just an easy example. Now, the next question number 4, is what choices can you make today to increase your satisfaction? So an example would be, let's go back to the travel. Let's say you share that passion of traveling internationally and you're not going anywhere today. Let's say it's a 1. You're traveling, but not internationally. So you might say, all right, what are some choices you could make? Are there opportunities for you to plan a trip, plan a vacation, go on a business trip? What actions could you take to increase that from a 1 to a 2 or a 3 or a 4, right? Now, in the case of the dinner parties, that's a little easier, right? Certainly easier to plan a dinner party than an international trip. But for the dinner party or whatever your passion is, maybe you like taking courses, love learning, whatever it is, what could you do today to move the needle? Now, what I would do is I would look at those top 5 and pick maybe pick a couple that have really low scores and then just be honest with yourself. Do they have low scores because, geez, until you did this exercise, you didn't realize how important they were to you? And so, now that you've got that clarity, you might put a little more effort into it. What attention have you been putting on those passions? If you've been putting very little attention on them, then it makes sense that you're not fully living them. Okay. So what could you do differently? So what I would do is I'd look at the ones with the lowest scores and come up with a couple of actions that you could take in the next 24 hours to just move the needle even a little bit. Now, I mentioned one of my passions is enjoying nature through sports. So every day, every week, every month, I'm asking myself, based on where I'm going to be, what are the activities that I can do out in nature? Can I go, is it just walking the beach, taking a hike in the mountains? If it's the winter, it's all about snowboarding. So, but you get to ask yourself, what choices or decisions you can make that are going to allow you to live your passions more fully. Now, question number 5 is, how can you keep these passions visible every day as a reminder? Where are you going to keep them? So let's say you go through, you spend a half an hour to an hour going through these questions that I just gave you. Well, when you've finished and you've got a bit of clarity, you don't really want to lose that momentum. So where could you put those passions and any notes that you've made about them, right? Now, in my Acclimate to Accelerate program, we would do a whole lot more work on this list, but for now, this will get you started. And then what I would ask you to do is work with the list, and if it feels like it's not quite the right list, redo it. Redo it again. At a minimum, redo it every 6 months. Because as you grow in your career and you grow in your life and your life evolves, your passions will absolutely change. They'll change over time, depending on where you are in your life. Are you getting out of school, starting a career, starting a family, buying a house, maybe getting ready for retirement? Wherever you are in the different stage of your life, your passions will continue to evolve. They may not change 100%. And I'll be honest with you, I keep using international travel as an example, but I just redid my own passions and it's not number 1 anymore. I love adventure, but international travel, I've been now to 34 countries, spent a lot of time living out of the country. It's not number 1 anymore because I really feel like I've done so much. I'm moving on to other areas in my life, more time focused on my business, my consulting and coaching. And so, I'm redoing the list. Okay, so that's going to be natural for you as well. Now, as I mentioned earlier, your top 5 passions are an important element for your success because the more that you can introduce or bring them into not just your personal life, but into your work life, you're going to find greater satisfaction, joy, fulfillment, energy, according to Warren Buffett, right? It's all about increasing your energy. And this spills over into how you show up on the job, your mood, your state of mind, how positive or optimistic you appear to be, your ability to manage stress. So there's so many ways that even this one exercise can pay dividends for you in your career, even if you don't make a career out of, one specific passion. Now, you can get creative and think of how you can introduce them into your work life. I've worked with colleagues and clients who've had so many different ways that they've just sprinkled them in to their work life without making a big career switch. And it really can bring a lot of satisfaction. So if you would like to gain clarity on how to dig deeper on this topic and choose the right path to move forward in your career, feel free to visit my website. It's successcompassstrategies.com/programs and take a look at Acclimate to Accelerate because that program, I created it as a step-by-step program. You can do it either self-paced or I can guide you through the process either, with or without private coaching. It all depends on what will best meet your needs. But you'll also find the link to the site, below in the notes. Anyway, I hope that you found this episode helpful and hopefully I've piqued your curiosity and enticed you a little bit to get going with these 5 important questions to really gain clarity on your passions and think about the impact this can have on your work and your life. Anyway, before you leave, be sure to subscribe to this podcast in iTunes so you don't miss a future episode. And I want to thank you for listening and have a great day.